Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive all about atomic habits.
You know, from the book Atomic Habits.
Yes, exactly, by James Clear.
That's right.
Um, and in our deep dive today, we're going to be going through some of the best tips and tricks from the book so you can start building those good habits and ditch the bad ones.
Yeah.
We know you guys are busy, so we're all about giving you actionable insights that you can use right away.
Yeah, Atomic Habits is a really practical book.
Yeah, I love that about it.
It breaks down kind of the science behind habits
Hmm.
into really simple steps so you can understand.
Yeah,
And it's not about willpower, it's
right.
about understanding those mechanisms that drive your behavior
Yeah.
and using that knowledge to actually make change.
You know what I loved, actually, right from the start of the book,
What's that?
was James Clear's own story.
Oh, yeah.
He had this terrible accident in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It was a serious facial injury
Right.
that really totally derailed his athletic dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But he used these tiny incremental improvements, these
Yeah.
atomic habits,
Yeah.
to not only recover physically, but then to achieve
Yeah.
some amazing things in his life.
Yeah, it's such a powerful example of how those small changes
Hmm.
consistently applied can really lead to remarkable results.
Yeah.
That's like the core message of the book.
It's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Yep.
Clear breaks down habits into this four-step loop:
Okay.
cue, craving, response,
Yep.
and reward.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you imagine our early ancestors,
Okay.
searching for food,
Hmm.
they would see a fruit tree.
Okay.
So that's the cue.
Right.
It triggers a craving for food.
Hmm.
The response is they're going to get out of that fruit. And
Yeah.
then the reward is that feeling of satisfaction from eating.
Yeah.
And this loop has been shaping our behavior,
Okay.
for millennia.
So fascinating how these ancient hardwired patterns still influence us today,
Yeah.
even in our modern world.
It's crazy, right?
So how can we use this loop to our advantage?
Well, by understanding those components,
Yeah.
we can actually start to identify the cues
Okay.
that trigger our habits,
Hmm.
both good and bad.
Right.
And once you're aware of that cue,
Yeah.
you can start to think about
Okay.
how to modify it or remove it,
Okay.
or replace it with a cue that triggers a more
Right.
desirable behavior.
Okay. I like that. So if
Yeah.
the cue for my late night snacking habit
Oh, yeah.
is walking into the kitchen after dinner,
Right.
maybe I could change my routine
Yeah, exactly.
and go for a walk instead.
Exactly. Or you could replace those snacks
Okay.
with healthier options, so it's
Uh,
easier to make that good choice when that craving hits.
I like that. So it's about being intentional with our environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And setting ourselves up for success.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the biggest takeaways from the book for me
Yeah.
is this idea that even tiny changes can have a huge impact over time.
Yes.
Clear calls it the power of compounding.
Yes. He uses these great analogies, like tiny gains in your finances
Yeah.
leading to wealth, or conversely,
Okay.
tiny losses in your fitness routine
Yeah.
eventually leading to weight gain.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that as daily actions, even the seemingly insignificant ones,
Yeah.
really accumulate over time.
It's like that saying, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
But it's not always easy to stay motivated.
No.
Especially when you're not seeing immediate results.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
And that's where the idea of the
Uh,
valley of disappointment comes in. It's that initial phase
Yeah.
where progress can feel really slow,
right.
even invisible.
Like planting a seed.
Yes,
you know,
great analogy.
You don't see anything happening for days, maybe even weeks.
Yeah.
But beneath the surface, the roots are growing
Mm-hmm.
and setting the stage
Absolutely.
for future growth.
Yeah.
So how do we push through that valley of disappointment?
Mm-hmm.
How do we stay committed
Yeah.
when it feels like our efforts aren't paying off?
Well, he introduces this concept
Oh.
called the plateau of latent potential.
Okay.
It's this idea that even though we may not see those immediate results,
Mhm.
our consistent efforts are actually creating this foundation
Okay.
for future breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So he compares it to like eating an ice cube.
Okay.
You apply heat, and for a while, nothing seems to happen.
Yeah.
But then suddenly,
Right.
the ice melts.
Yeah.
Right. And all that applied heat wasn't wasted. It was
Yeah.
building up
Yeah.
to that moment of transformation.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It just reminds us that consistency is key,
Yes.
even when progress is slow.
Absolutely.
So now we've got to get into another big concept that I think is important,
Okay. What's that?
and that is identity-based habits.
Yes.
So it's the idea that lasting behavior change
Mm-hmm.
comes from shifting your identity,
Yes.
not just your actions.
That's right.
So I'm intrigued by this.
Yeah.
So it's not just about doing the habit.
Mm-hmm.
It's about becoming the type of person who embodies that habit.
Precisely.
I see.
Your actions are a reflection of who you believe you are.
Okay.
So if you want to change your habits,
Yeah,
you need to start by changing the story you tell yourself about who you are.
I see.
So for example, people who identify as runners
Okay.
are much more likely to stick with a running habit.
Okay, like they've internalized that identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's driving their behavior.
And that makes me think about my own habits. If I want to be a writer,
Yes.
I need to start thinking of myself as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
not just someone who wants to write someday.
Absolutely. And that shift in mindset
Yeah.
can make a huge difference
Yeah.
in your motivation and your consistency.
So now we also have to think about another big takeaway
Yeah.
from the book,
Okay.
which is our environment plays a huge role in shaping our habits.
It really does.
Clear says that behavior is a function
Mm-hmm.
of both the person and their environment.
Exactly.
So he cites Luhmann's equation B
Uh-huh.
equals F of PE,
Yep.
which essentially states that our behavior
Yeah.
is influenced by both our personal characteristics, P,
Mm-hmm.
and our environment, E.
Yes.
This means we can't just rely on willpower to change our habits.
No.
We also need to create an environment that supports our desired behavior.
That's right.
And I love the example that he gives about how redesigning the cafeteria
Oh, yeah.
at Massachusetts General Hospital actually influenced people's food choices
Yeah.
just by rearranging things.
Yeah.
They were able to subtly encourage healthier eating habits.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This
Yeah.
idea of choice architecture.
Right.
We can use that in our own lives, too.
Right. So instead of relying on willpower
Yeah.
to resist that bag of chips in the pantry,
Uh-huh.
we can remove it from our environment altogether,
Exactly.
making it less likely we'll indulge.
Right.
So we've talked about the habit loop, the power of compounding the importance of identity and the influence of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually put all of this into practice?
Well, he lays out 4 laws of behavior change,
Okay.
making good habits attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Okay.
And these laws provide a practical framework for building better habits.
Got it.
We're going to dive into each of those
Okay.
in a lot more detail
Perfect.
in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive. We left off talking about the 4 laws of behavior change. So let's dive into the first law. Making good habits obvious.
Yeah, and so much of our behavior is driven by those cues in our environment
Mm-hmm.
that we're not even consciously aware of.
Right.
How do we bring those cues to the surface and start being more intentional about the habits that they trigger?
Yeah, well, he introduces this tool called the habit scorecard.
Okay.
And it's basically a list of your daily habits from the
Okay.
moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
Okay.
And it helps you become more aware of
Yeah.
your kind of automatic behaviors.
It's like shining a light on those autopilot actions that we do without even thinking. Trying to see
Exactly.
how that would be valuable.
Yeah, it can be really eye-opening.
Mhm.
Once you kind of see those habits laid out in front of you,
Right.
you can start to identify the ones that you want to change.
Claire also shares that fascinating story about Japanese railway conductors
Oh,
using a technique called pointing and calling to reduce errors.
I love that story.
I know, it's so good.
They literally point at and call out each action they take.
Mhm.
Even something as simple as pressing a button.
Right.
And it seems excessive.
Yeah,
But by bringing those actions into conscious awareness,
right.
they dramatically reduce the risk of making mistakes.
Makes you wonder how much more mindful we could be in our own lives if we applied that same level of awareness
Right.
to our everyday actions.
Exactly.
Okay, so once we've identified the habits we want to change, how do we make those good habits more attractive?
Right. Well, we're naturally drawn to things that are enjoyable and rewarding.
Sure.
Right? So one way to make a good habit more appealing
Yeah.
is to pair it with something you already enjoy.
Oh, I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
so if I'm trying to get into the habit of reading more,
Mm-hmm.
I could create a cozy reading nook and light a scented candle to
Exactly.
make the experience more inviting.
Yeah. Or you could listen to an audiobook while you walk or do chores.
Right.
Make it easier to fit it into your day.
Love that. It's about making the habit feel like a treat, not a chore.
Yes.
I like that Clear also talks about the influence of social norms.
Yeah.
We tend to imitate the habits of people around us,
That's right.
especially those we admire or aspire to be like.
Yeah. He shares that story of the Polgar sisters
Oh, yeah.
who were raised to be chess prodigies.
Right.
Their father created this environment
Mm-hmm.
where chess was the most attractive and rewarding activity.
Yeah.
And they all went on to achieve incredible success.
But it's not just about surrounding yourself with high achievers, right?
Mm,
It's also about finding a community of people who share your goals and values
absolutely.
and who can support you.
Yeah, having that support system can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we've made our good habits obvious and attractive.
Yep.
What's next?
Okay, so now we need to make them easy.
Okay.
This is where the 2-minute rule comes in.
Ah, yes, one of the most practical takeaways from
Right.
the book.
The idea is to break down your desired habit to its smallest, most manageable form.
Okay,
So instead of saying, I'm going to exercise for an hour today,
right,
you say, I'm going to put on my workout clothes.
right. Or I'm going to take out my yoga mat.
Exactly,
You
or
know,
whatever it is.
Yeah, the key is to remove those barriers to getting started
Mm-hmm.
and make that initial step really easy.
Yeah.
So you overcome inertia and build momentum. Exactly. And once you've taken that first step, it's much easier to keep going.
It really is.
And you might find that, once you're in your workout clothes,
Yeah.
you actually do feel like exercising for a few minutes.
That's right.
And then those few minutes turn into a full workout.
Exactly.
And before you know it, you've established a consistent habit.
That's right.
Okay, last but not least, how do we make those good habits satisfying?
Okay, so we're more likely to repeat behaviors
Yeah.
that bring us pleasure or satisfaction. So that's where rewards come in.
But we don't want to rely on external rewards all the time.
That's right.
Like, buying ourselves a gift every time we achieve a goal.
Yeah. It's important to cultivate
Yeah.
those intrinsic rewards as well.
Right.
Those feelings of satisfaction and accomplishment
Right.
that come from the habit itself.
So if I'm working on my writing habit,
Mm-hmm.
the reward could be the feeling of flow
Yes.
that I experience when I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
or the satisfaction of finishing a piece that I'm proud of.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to make the habit itself enjoyable.
Yeah?
And
Not
rewarding.
just focusing on the end goal.
That's right. And he also suggests using a habit tracker.
Oh, yeah. I love Habit Tracker.
That visual representation of your progress.
Yeah.
Can be so motivating.
It's so motivating.
It's like seeing those check marks on a calendar.
Yeah.
Or those pounds dropping on the scale.
Right. It just gives you that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Reinforces the belief that you're capable of change.
That's right.
So we've covered the 4 laws of behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
But what about breaking bad habits?
Right.
It seems like it would be the opposite of everything we've talked about.
It is. It's about making those bad habits invisible,
Okay.
unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Okay, so if I'm trying to break the habit of scrolling social media before bed,
Uh-huh.
I could make it invisible by deleting the apps from my phone,
Yep.
unattractive by setting screen time limits,
Yes.
difficult by putting my phone in another room,
That's right.
and unsatisfying by reminding myself how it disrupts my sleep.
Got it.
I like that.
And he offers some great examples,
Mm-hmm.
of how these principles can be applied in real life.
Okay.
Remember the story about the invention of the cash register?
Oh, yeah.
And how that helped reduce employee theft?
Right, by making it much harder to steal the money.
Exactly.
It essentially removed the temptation.
It increased the friction
Yeah.
associated with that bad habit,
Right.
making it much less likely to occur.
And then another powerful strategy he talks about is using a habit contract.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's a formal agreement
Okay.
that you make with yourself
Mm-hmm.
or with an accountability partner that outlines the desired behavior,
Right.
the consequences for not following through,
Okay.
and the rewards for success.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses Brian Harris's weight loss journey as a really compelling example
Oh, yeah.
of how a habit contract can be used to create accountability and really increase motivation.
I can see how that would add a layer of commitment,
Mm-hmm.
make it harder to back out. It's like
Yeah.
having a personal cheerleader in your corner,
Right.
rooting for your success and holding you accountable.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in the final chapters of the book, he goes kind of beyond those basics and delves into some more advanced strategies.
Yeah.
One concept he introduces is the Goldilocks rule.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. What's that all about?
It's this idea that to achieve peak motivation
Okay.
and enter that state of flow,
Okay.
we need to be working on tasks that are just challenging enough to keep us engaged,
Okay.
but not so difficult that we get overwhelmed or discouraged.
So finding that sweet spot where
Yeah.
we're stretching ourselves,
Mhm.
but not breaking ourselves.
Exactly. And when we hit that sweet spot,
Yeah.
we enter that state of flow,
Mm-hmm.
where time flies by.
Yeah.
We're totally absorbed in the activity.
I love that.
And he actually cites some research
Okay.
that to achieve that state of flow, a task must be roughly 4% beyond your current ability.
Interesting.
So it's about constantly pushing yourself to that edge of your capabilities.
It's like habit formation to a whole new level.
It is.
It's not just about building good habits.
Right.
It's about, like, achieving mastery in any field.
Exactly.
I like that. But we also have to remember that, even when we find those right habits
Yeah.
and we're enjoying the process,
Uh-huh.
there are still going to be times
Yeah.
when we feel like giving up.
Yes.
How do we deal with those inevitable dips in motivation?
Yeah, it's about developing mental toughness,
Okay?
being able to push through those difficult moments, stay committed to our goals.
Yeah.
He even suggests that the ability to handle boredom
Uh-huh.
might be the key differentiator
Okay.
between, those who achieve lasting success
Yeah.
and those who don't.
So powerful. I mean, we tend to think that successful people are always passionate and motivated.
Right.
But the reality is, even the most successful people
Mm-hmm.
have moments where they just don't feel like showing up or doing the work.
Yeah, and he shares that great story about the elite weightlifting coach
Oh, yeah.
who said that the best athletes were actually those who could handle the monotony
Yeah.
of training day in and day out.
Just doing the same lifts over and over again. It's not
Yeah.
always about feeling inspired or excited.
It's not.
It's about developing the discipline to stick with your habits,
Yeah,
even when you don't feel like it.
exactly. He says professionals stick to the schedule.
Yeah.
Amateurs let life get in the way.
Such a powerful distinction. So how do we cultivate that professional mindset?
Well, he gives a few tips.
Okay.
One is to focus on the process, not just the outcome.
Okay.
Find ways to enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
So if I'm working on my writing habit, instead of focusing solely on getting published,
Yeah.
I could focus on the joy of crafting a sentence.
Exactly.
Or the satisfaction of creating a compelling character.
Mm-hmm.
The thrill of discovering a new idea.
That's right.
I like that.
And another tip is to create a system for dealing
Yeah,
with those
okay.
inevitable moments of resistance.
Yeah.
What are you going to do
Yeah.
when you don't feel like showing up?
Yeah.
What strategies can you use to
Right.
get yourself back on track?
So maybe I could have a backup plan,
Yes.
like a shorter, easier version of my writing routine
That's a great strategy.
that I can do on those days when I'm just feeling less motivated.
Exactly. It's about removing those barriers to getting started,
Yeah.
making it as easy as possible to stay consistent.
And then Clear also emphasizes the importance of having a strong why,
Yes.
a clear understanding of your motivations and goals.
When we know why we're doing something, it's
Yeah.
much easier to stay committed,
Mhm.
even when things get tough.
It's like having that guiding star that keeps us oriented,
Yes.
especially when we feel lost or discouraged.
Yeah.
And then finally, Clear reminds us to embrace the journey.
Yes.
Habit formation is not a destination.
It's not.
It's an ongoing process of
Yeah.
continuous improvement.
That's right.
It's about constantly striving to become a little bit better each day.
Mm-hmm. Even if those improvements are incremental.
And those tiny improvements compounded over time can lead to remarkable results.
I do.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into atomic habits.
It has.
And we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But there's still one more crucial piece to discuss.
Okay.
How to make those good habits stick for the long haul.
Yes. We'll explore that on the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into atomic habits. We've covered so much ground, from the 4-step habit loop to the 4 laws of behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's talk about the long game.
Right.
How do we make sure these habits stick?
Yeah.
How do we make them a lasting part of our lives?
It's one thing to build a habit for a few weeks or even a few months.
Yeah. But how do we make those habits sustainable over the long term? That's
Right.
where the concept of habit stacking comes in.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of habit stacking.
Have you?
Yeah. Could you remind us how it works?
Yes. So it's about leveraging the power of your existing habits
Okay.
to build new ones.
Okay.
So you identify a habit you already do consistently.
Yeah.
And then you stack a new habit on top of it.
Okay. So, for example, if I always make a cup of coffee first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
I could stack the habit of reading for 10 minutes onto that existing habit.
Exactly. By linking the new habit to an established routine,
Right.
you make it much more likely that you'll actually do it.
Yeah.
And over time, that new habit becomes integrated into your daily routine.
It's like creating a chain reaction of good habits.
Precisely. And he also talks about, the importance of making those habits enjoyable.
Yeah.
We're more likely to stick with things we actually like doing.
Makes sense.
He even suggests that we should think of ourselves as playing a game, where we can choose to play in a way that favors our strengths.
So it makes so much sense. If you're naturally good at something, you're more likely to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it, you're more likely to keep doing it.
Exactly.
So it's not just about forcing ourselves to do things we think we should do.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding those activities that light us up, that make us feel energized and engaged.
Exactly. He uses the example of, choosing the right sport or musical instrument.
Yeah,
You're much more likely to excel at something
right.
and stick with it
Yeah.
if he aligns with your natural abilities and interests.
Reminds me of that saying, choose a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes. And he emphasizes that this doesn't mean that you should shy away from challenges or
Right.
never try new things.
Yeah.
It just means that you should focus your energy on areas where you have a natural advantage.
It's about finding your sweet spot, that place where challenge and enjoyment intersect.
Exactly.
So now, even when we find the right habits and we're enjoying the process,
Yeah,
there are still going to be times
right.
when we feel like giving up.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with those inevitable dips in motivation?
He talks about the importance of developing mental toughness,
Okay?
being able to push through those difficult moments
Mm-hmm.
and stay committed to your goals.
Yeah.
He even suggests that the ability to handle boredom
Okay.
might be the key differentiator between those who achieve lasting success
Right.
and those who don't.
So powerful. I mean, eh, we tend to think that successful people are always passionate and motivated,
Yeah,
but the reality is, even the most successful problem have moments where they just don't feel like showing up or doing the work.
yeah, they're human.
So how do we cultivate that professional mindset, that ability to stay focused and disciplined even when things get tough?
He offers a few practical tips.
Okay.
One is to focus on the process, not just the outcome.
Okay.
Find ways to enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
Okay. So if I'm working on my writing habit, instead of focusing solely on getting published,
Mm-hmm.
I could focus on the joy of crafting a sentence, the satisfaction of creating a compelling character, or the thrill of discovering a new idea.
Exactly. And another tip is to create a system for dealing with those inevitable moments of resistance.
Okay.
So what will you do when you don't feel like showing up?
Yeah.
What strategies can you use to get yourself back on track?
Yeah. So maybe I could have a backup plan, like a shorter, easier version of my writing routine
That's a great idea.
that I could do on those days when I'm just feeling less motivated.
Yeah, it's about removing those barriers to getting started, making it as easy as possible to stay consistent.
Okay.
And he also emphasizes the importance of having a strong why,
Right.
a clear understanding of your motivations and goals.
When we know why we're doing something, it's much easier to stay committed even when things get tough. It's
Exactly.
like having that guiding star that keeps us oriented, especially when we feel lost or discouraged.
It is.
And then finally, Clear reminds us to embrace the journey.
Yes.
Habit formation is not a destination. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement.
It is.
It's about constantly striving to become a little bit better each day,
That's right.
even if those improvements are incremental.
Even if they are.
And those tiny improvements compounded over time can lead to remarkable results.
They really can.
Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. What a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
It's not about making some grand gesture or overhauling your entire life overnight.
Mm.
It's about showing up each day and doing the work, even when it's hard or boring, and trusting that those efforts will eventually lead to remarkable results. That's the essence of Atomic Habits.
That's it.
So what's one tiny change you can make today to move closer to the person you want to become? Think about that. And remember, small changes consistently applied can lead to extraordinary results. That's it for our deep dive into Atomic Habits. Thanks for joining us.